Hi, Sophie here, just letting everybody know that this episode was recorded a little off the cuff, and consequently I didn't ask the guest to introduce herself, so our guest for this episode was Saint Trina, who we've had on the channel a few times before. She's an Elden Ring YouTuber, and you can find her channel at Saint Trina Lore. So we were supposed to record this a couple of days ago, and then we had to push it back, and then fortuitously the trailer dropped in between those. So we're going to talk about the trailer now.
That's very important.
So this is gonna come out before the real episode we're doing. This is just our reaction to the trailer.
Okay, so 2 videos.
Okay. Yeah, I'll cut it in half.
Okay, cool.
What were your impressions?
The absolute highlight for me is like the first shot. Or
Right,
the first
yeah.
sequence of shots with Marika. And she seems to be reaching her hand into some kind of like god Jaina type entity here. I don't really know what to call it, but it looks like Godskins, and we're going to have to get into that in specific, but I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. So what was your initial impressions?
Yeah, so like I felt like that the first trailer, it looked like more of Elden Ring.
Yeah. That's what my girlfriend said.
This one looks like it's going back into things that the main game kind of touched on and then didn't develop in a great amount of detail.
Yeah, and I'm so hyped.
Actually, I agree with you that like the very beginning of that was probably my favorite part. That's kind of when it clicked for me what the Shadow of the Erdtree actually meant.
Okay, let's hear it.
All right, because initially when they talked about the Shadow of the Erdtree, I was thinking like, oh, it's going to be like a Godwin thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this looks like it's tying back into all the stuff from the base game about like the way that the Golden Order was created, the way the Erdtree was created, and things like the Crucible and like the way that like death was bound and things like that, which are in the base game they are talked about in this very sort of mythic way.
Right.
Like, and then Marika took the Crucible and made the Erdtree, and then the Rune of Death was bound, and then the Flame was bound atop the mountain. But
it's just a fable at that point.
Yeah, you never actually really see how that articulates. You're never really shown it, you're told about it, and you're told about it in that way that's kind of quite vague, and I always assumed that was going to be the end of it. Like, we just hear this creation myth, but we don't actually see it, whereas in this trailer, we are seeing at the start of it, like, complete with a narrator saying, like, this is the beginning.
Right. It's actually the kind of bone-chilling. My girlfriend, who I was chatting with her a lot about this, right? She actually at first thought it was Godwin's eye. The eye Jaina is like, it looks like an eye, but it's made out of Godskin skin.
Right.
However, the reason I brought it up was that I think it'd be really poetic is if we saw a similar scene happen between Godwin and Miquella anyway, because they could easily be like the mirror. They're kind of like the Omega to her Alpha.
Miyazaki has said that like the DLC is not going to be a flashback situation. It's not going to be like Artorias of the Abyss where you're going back and actually engaging with these things. You're going to be shown them, but the DLC timeline it's the same timeline as the base game.
Okay.
That Marika situation, that's presumably like a flashback to what happened. That mass of like bodies and things.
Yes. Do you think it's the Crucible?
Okay, here's the interesting part of that. So the Crucible's described as like this is the place where once all life was blended together.
Yeah.
Marika shapes that into the Erdtree.
Mm-hmm.
Marika also has to bind the flame of the giants atop the mountain before what she's calling the Age of the Erdtree can begin.
Right. Okay, got it.
The question marky bit in there is like, was the Erdtree already there when she did that? Or did she bind the flame and then make the Erdtree? Because it could sort of go either way. It doesn't exactly matter.
Yeah.
And we hear all this stuff about the Crucible, about it was this big question mark over what it even was. Like, you don't see it.
Right.
You don't encounter it. You just hear that there was this thing called the Crucible, and all of life was blended together into the Crucible. And Godfrey and his knights encountered the Crucible.
Oh.
and it did something to them. It's somehow tied to the Omen,
Yep.
and it's somehow tied to the Misbegotten, because the way the Crucible works is like it has within it all these traits that are not human. It has like horns and wings and tails and things like that. It's like all of life is mingled together. And basically, Marika shapes that into the Erdtree. Godfrey and his knights are somehow involved. Later on, you start getting the Misbegotten being created. It doesn't specify if Misbegotten are just a thing that arises or if they're actually born from people. People view them as punishment for having messed with the Crucible. So it's like you mess with the Crucible to do this thing, but then it's like the Crucible sort of leaked out and it made these like chimera creatures because the Crucible is this blending of life.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Godfrey and the Crucible Knights, where it's a little vaguer, but it's like, yeah, the Crucible Knights have all these Crucible powers. Like they can summon forth like wings and tails and things they really shouldn't have. And the reason they wear these suits that completely cover their body is that something happened to them. And it's never specified what, but the implication is like under that there's something that's not human anymore. Something changed them.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Like they're one with the tree.
Yeah, Godfrey himself doesn't seem to have been like mutated or anything by it. But I
Strangely.
think it's notable that Godfrey's kid is an Omen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think like again the implication there, because omens have like horns and tails and things, is like some of that crucible energy, whatever you want to call it, the crucible's nature, seeped into Godfrey as well. So
Mm-hmm.
you get the royal heir being this like chimera creature. With regard to the crucible in the DLC,
Mm-hmm.
there is that weird hippo monster
Yep.
that does this like very very overtly like crucible coded move where it's falling down. You get the same gold, the same attack. You get to see that the player character can do that later on. I think that's actually called aspect of the crucible spine. It's like that's its official name.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah, of course the crucible, there's something of the crucible in this place. So this is where the Erdtree and the Golden Order are first sort of fashioned, right?
Naturally.
The other interesting thing about this place with reference to the Crucible and the Omens is that that castle with the lion people in it,
Okay. Yep.
like there's this castle and they have like the big Chinese dragon lion, but there seem to be omen horns all over everything.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
These weird twisted horns that we would associate those with omen.
Used to be revered.
Used to be revealed. Yeah, that's the
So,
thing,
yeah.
because I assumed from that first trailer, oh, this is just like another one of America's kids has a castle in this place for reason we will discover later.
Okay.
But I read an interview with Miyazaki and he said, no, that place was there before Marika.
Oh, wow. Okay, that. Ooh, that has a lot of timeline implications.
Yeah, so it's like that's where all this like reverence for the horns must come from, reverence for beasts comes from,
Hmm.
because I had initially viewed that as like this is this weird sort of siloed off part of like Marika's Golden Order. Maybe it's just been isolated for so long it doesn't engage with her anymore.
Right.
Where instead of omens being persecuted and thrown in a sewer, the omens are revered, and that's why there's all these people with omen horns. It's why there's statues of a lion with omen horns.
Right.
It's possibly where that weird bear with horns attack thing is coming from.
Hmm.
But now I'm like, no, this isn't necessarily the Golden Order, is it? This is pre-Golden Order.
Right.
So all of that omen stuff was probably there before.
I can agree with that for sure.
I am wondering if like that castle has something to do with the Crucible. That like this was the place that was like full of the people who were like maybe kind of chimeric, half human, half animal. They
Right.
worshipped these weird horned lions.
Yep.
Maybe that's where that spine beast comes from. And Marika has had to subdue that place to get to the Crucible.
Right. So we're imagining like this is kind of the place where she figured out how to ascend from a beast to a human, if you will.
Maybe something like that. But
Yeah.
like
Okay.
that, the thing is that despite being pre-Golden Order, it just looks like something from the actual Golden Order.
I know. Yeah. It didn't look old enough.
Yeah, so that seems like that's maybe the place that like Marika kind of started putting her plan into motion. She had to go there to get all this Crucible stuff.
Hmm.
And that's why you're seeing like the horns, you're seeing the rune bear head with the omen horns. There's this obvious worship of lions with horns there.
Okay. Yeah.
see statues of horned lions, and I also thought like that was interesting because they were depicting the lions with the omen horns. There's something has gotten into them, like they're not supposed to be like this.
Because if they're saying it's not a flashback, this would make more sense to me if all those battles that we saw with like the
Mm.
Wicker Man dread
Yeah, yeah,
machines and all that,
yeah,
and there's even an omen that they're like kind of got stabbed on the
yeah,
stairway.
yeah, yeah.
So to me, what you're saying makes total sense to me because I'm also confused if it's not a flashback. If it is a flashback and this is just when they cleared out the omens the very first time, like way back when,
Mm.
then it lines up perfectly to me. So I'm like,
Yeah, that's what I think it is. That also sort of ties into that character that we see in the portrait. He looks a bit like Morgoth's corpse when the omen stuff sort of fades from him. I again initially assumed that's another one of Marika's kids because he just looks like Morgoth. He's sort of impaled on what looks like shards of the Elden Ring,
mm-hmm.
but it looks like no, that was the guy who was there before.
Okay, question mark. Why the heck doesn't Godfrey turn into this form? I don't think we have time to fully unpack it, but but like that's a what the heck to me.
Godfrey doesn't get the Elden Ring in him though, does he? He just gets grace in him.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. Technically.
Because to me, the thing about like Godfrey is he's just being used by people.
Yeah.
So like slight tangent here. What was interesting to me was Messmer's line about like why do you give lordship to someone who is bereft of light?
Mm-hmm.
Who did you take that to possibly be referring to?
Oh, I really wasn't sure. I was just going with the tarnish, but like
Yeah, so
it's
yeah,
slightly
yeah.
strange timeline wise.
It's clearly not Miquella because Miquella is completely incandescent with light.
Right. He's hella light.
Right. I thought for a while it might have been Godwyn,
Okay.
but I don't think so because we've gotten like very little acknowledgement of Godwyn in any of this.
Very strange.
The closest thing to acknowledging Godwyn in the DLC is you see those like mutated grey trees that are sort of the sign of like there is Deathroot here on one of the
Okay.
plateaus.
Okay. They got the same
That's the
ones.
closest thing I get to like Godwyn vibes, but it's weird because like they specify in the base game that like Miquella is wanting Godwyn to die a true death.
Right. That's his whole goal.
And here we finally get Miquella.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm assuming there will be some Godwyn payoff in this.
Me too.
Like you said, Messmer could be referring to the Tarnished. He could also be referring to Godfrey,
Oh, okay.
who is like the Tarnished and Godfrey are like kind of the same thing, where it's
Yeah.
like someone who your light has been taken from you and you've been exiled. Because here's the thing about that line that kept throwing me, is that does Marika want the Tarnished to become Elden Lord?
Yeah, I really don't know because she's so far removed from the situation by the time we get resurrected.
As far as I'm aware, the only time you hear like, hey Tarnished, your job is to go and be Elden Lord, it's direct from the Greater Will to the Two Fingers.
Yeah.
And they specify, like, yeah, actually, the whole reason the Tarnished are back now is that Marika's plan didn't work. Marika's idea was actually just get her kids to fight each other and see who wins.
Right.
And the Tarnished were just like, they were just what she had, like, to begin with. Like, they were just as like a sledgehammer that she used to sort of clear out the lands between. And then when she was done with them, like, the
Right.
light in Godfrey's eyes disappears and she sends them off. Yeah, it's weird. So going back to the giant corpse mountain, which is interesting, right?
Yeah, you're talking about the inner room, the inner chamber, right?
The other thing that Marika does, right? She needs to bind the Crucible or do something to the Crucible to make the Erdtree pop up. She also does something to Destined Death.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've talked about for years now, Elden Ring is obsessed with like the duality of things.
Yes.
It's obsessed with something cannot exist on its own. It has to be in a relationship with something else.
Absolutely.
And they're pulling back and forth against each other in this kind of like dialectical relationship. Marika, in order to create the Golden Order, her first action is that she binds away death, right? So they talk specifically about like that was the affair from which gold arose.
Yep.
When they're talking about Marika. So presumably that's the birth of the Golden Order as we know it.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Disparity.
even see like Marika is reaching up and she's pulling, like she's almost pulling the sky down.
Yeah. It's
And
awesome.
that's where that weird pattern in the sky comes from. That like that
Mm-hmm.
literally is like drapes and a dress and things. It's
Mm-hmm.
Marika pulling the sky down. So I'm wondering if what you're looking at there is actually her somehow binding death, and in order to bind death, she just needs tons and tons of corpses to do it because they're dead. She's like sucking the death out of things. So I have this methodology for when I engage with FromSoft DLCs at this point,
Okay.
which is that I look at what the data mining community has pulled up, and I go like, okay, what was changed really late in development? Because
Yeah.
that's probably going to be the DLC thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
So the three major things that like were changed very late in development to the point where like the text in version 1.00 and 1.01 are different
Mm-hmm.
are Miquella,
Yep.
the serpent in the Erdtree,
Yep.
and the Glow-Eyed Queen.
And Saint Trina. Don't forget Saint Trina.
And Saint Trina and Miquella are the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So like the Miquella stuff is fairly clear. We're
Mm-hmm.
getting Mick. It's just a front and center. This is a DLC that's got Miquella in it. Miquella seems to be playing the role of Melina in this.
Mm-hmm. But Melina, we got to chase down, kind of.
I think that's something that maybe has to happen because if you can activate this DLC at any point, you could do it after Melina's left.
Right.
So you can't rely on Melina being there to actually narrate anything to you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Miquella's going to be the Melina figure in this. What's interesting in the Miyazaki interview that I read, he talks about how in the Land of Shadow there is no grace. So the implication I got from that is there won't actually be sites of grace like there are in the base game. It looks like it's those Miquella runes.
Yeah, it looks like it might work differently.
Yeah, yeah. So those, like, we wondered what those were and why there were these runes sticking out of the ground, and if they were like a PvP thing or something like that, or a
Mm-hmm.
co-op thing. It looks like those might actually be replacing Sites of Grace because,
Yeah.
from what I can tell, like, I don't think you see any Sites of Grace in any of the trailers, despite them showing off gameplay.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. Like, Grace can't reach
Yeah.
this place.
So the second thing that they alter is the exact role that serpents play.
Right.
So a lot of the stuff about like the gladiators wearing the serpent,
That was all pretty vague, like, the whole way through, I must say.
there's a couple of references in the older versions of the script to like the serpent was the devourer of the gods, or the serpent was the doom of the gods. But in the rewrite for version 1.01, they go all in on like the serpent is a traitor to the Erdtree.
Right.
The reason people like watching gladiators dressed as serpents is because everyone in the lands between hates serpents and wants to watch them suffer. That's all added.
So it kind of sounds to me in a fable allegorical kind of sense that we're watching Eve blame the snake for like what she
Kind
did.
of, yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of like her scapegoat, like make everybody hate this thing that like
Mm.
maybe that huge entity was the snake's womb. Like that's what I'm thinking of, that big fleshy room.
I don't know what the hell the Igina is. Like, I've, like, blown it up. I've, like, played with the color levels. I don't know what the hell this is. But it's interesting because, like, she's pulling something out of her, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then it looks like she's using that to sort of pull, like, the gold out of the sky. So it's like, what did she have with her? Like, it looks like she needs that thing.
Right. How did she get it
Right.
out? And I do think it's like a threads of fate thing. Would you
Yeah.
give me that point?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What she's basically doing is saying your fate is no longer to die. Your
Mm,
fate is to live forever in my epoch of life. But
mm. No wonder shit went
yeah,
wrong.
well, yeah. I mean, that's the interesting thing about Marika is that like she's a fertility goddess who views life in this very like detached way as just like the state of not being dead.
Yeah, she sucks at being a mom.
So the third thing that they changed, and this is like a crossover a little bit with Rykard, if you look at the old art, the Godskins are depicted in Rykard's area, and the flames they have are just red.
Oh. Oh. Very,
Yeah.
very
And
interesting.
if you look at like how the Godskins actually work. Like, if you divorce them from everything else, like, yes, they have these, like, skin aprons on, but, like, one of them has a tail like a snake, and the other one extends his body out like a snake.
Quicksilver.
The whole thing about snakes is, like, snakes keep shedding skin.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I would kind of not be totally surprised if, like, the Godskins, when they first made them, that was just Rykard's faction. They were, like, people who were sort of half turning into snakes and, like, shedding skin and things and
Okay.
wielding the flame of Mount Gelmir. And then they got sort of, like, shifted off to become the Gloam-Eyed Queen's faction. If you're wearing, like, the skin of the gods to freak them out, why does that make you grow a tail?
Yeah.
That's really weird.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they always struck me as, like, from a design point of view, they look like they should be with Rykard.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, it's, I mean, like, that's not a criticism. Like, pretty much all the interesting parts of Bloodborne are done that way. But then it's also interesting that, like, the villain they introduce is another one of Marika's kids who no one talks about.
Right. He kind of just like is. He just really should be Rykard, or somebody under his wing. I mean, maybe he still could be.
Like, that place that he's burning down, that looks like it's the castle with the lion people in it. Like, almost
Yeah.
certainly.
Yeah, it makes
Yeah,
sense. Like it was like almost. These are probably like Godfrey's kin, honestly, originally.
that castle is already, like, the most interesting part to me because it's got some historical relationship with everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I first saw that they had, like, this big Chinese dragon puppet lion,
Mm-hmm.
I thought, oh, they're copying Godfrey because Godfrey had a lion on his back.
Right.
But now it seems like it's the other way around. Does the whole Godfrey lion thing actually come from this place?
I got one for you. Godfrey is under
Mm-hmm.
some kind of permanent version of the Mimic Veil spell,
Right.
and he's really a lion. He's Sarash. That's my like crazed theory on that one. And then once you imagine him as a lion guy, then all of a sudden I think a lot of these lines that you just brought up make a lot more sense. Like being related with Farum Azula and being related with the first defeat, basically. Like there's like 4 armies that Marika has to kill off before she can really be in control fully. And this is like the first one. And yeah, that's what I think happened. I think she's like hiding him and pretending he's a man, and that's why her kids become omens because he's really a lion,
Yeah.
and that's why all this shit. So that's my take on that one.
It does also confirm that, like, Messmer's the guy in charge of the big Wicker Man things.
Yeah.
Which are again interesting because those have little spiral horns coming out of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I had assumed they were part of that, like, Omen place, but it looks like, no, they're Messmer's.
So I had somebody in my Discord channel, forgive me, I can't remember who it was, who initially said this to me. But Wicker Men was like were made to mock the other side.
Okay.
And so it actually kind of makes sense.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, so they got like
that
this
actually
little
yeah.
Sun Realm, by the way. I think that's pretty much confirmation that this place is the Sun Realm that is mentioned
Maybe,
in the shields and
Yeah.
stuff. But they've got a little sun on them, and then the horns, and they're just being like, ha ha ha, die.
Yeah. And it looks like they're maybe necessary for the whatever Marek is doing, like the creation of the shadow of the Erdtree.
Mm.
Do we think it's the Helfen, or is the Helfen just going to be something that they mention once and then never again?
Oh, I hope it's the Helfen. So I think it's a lot of places, and I'm gonna do like a my final crazed rant where I just kind of like vomit all my theories in one stream, like later this weekend. Yeah, I might as well. And yeah, so I do think it's the Helfen. I think it's like all of the death places that people reference, they're all referencing the same place.
So the other thing that I guess we should talk about is, like, we seem to have an actual screenshot of Saint Trina now.
Yeah. Oh, I was so hyped when I saw that. That was so cool. Yeah.
So there's a couple of shots in the first trailer that sort of were like Saint Trina coded.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a field of purple flowers where you see like a Trina lily in the background.
And yeah, there's like a person who's on the ground doing like a soldier dead in a field type pose.
There was that painting of the woman next to the unnamed guy there was a theory that she was Saint Trina largely because she had her eyes were covered and she had these very long braids.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it just comes down to like the covered eyes and the braid. She doesn't really look like Saint Trina
Yeah,
like any other
I
depictions.
agree.
It's yeah, this is the thing is we don't actually see Saint Trina really. We see depictions of Saint Trina.
Mm-hmm.
But also Saint Trina is something that people see like in their dreams and stuff like that. So it's not 100% clear what Saint Trina even looks like. Does Saint Trina have a big eye in the middle of her forehead? We don't know.
Yeah, she might. She honestly might.
And the sort of the purple hazy like lighting of the field with the lilies and the person lying in it,
Mm-hmm.
that's later reused when they're fighting that weird Nukkalavi sort of like centaur, possibly albinoric thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know when you fight like the ancestral spirit and you sort of just go into this other realm and there's just like weird shit happening.
Right.
I sort of feel like that might be happening in this DLC at least a couple of times.
Oh, we're gonna take naps.
There are shots in it that straight up look like something is overlaid over the world that you're in now. Like the scene where you're fighting the dancer in red, and it's in this very, very vivid blue field with these sort of particles floating up into the sky.
Mm-hmm.
You get a sort of look at the area. Like there's that shot of all these plateaus and castles and everything, and there's nothing else around. Like you'd expect if you'd see like, monsters off in the distance and
Or some kind
um
of point of
yeah.
interest.
And yeah, whereas like no, everything is completely desaturated. It's actually black and white, including the sky,
Yeah.
apart from the really, really vivid blue flowers. So that to me says that's not like an area per se. It's like
Mm.
like you walking in that area and you touch something like Evergaol, like an Evergaol works.
Right.
And you suddenly like you go through a loading screen and you'll be in the same area, but it will look like this.
Okay, awesome. I hope that's true.
I wonder if the same thing is true of the purple.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because St. Trina's whole thing is sleep, and you find this person who seems to be sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if we're going to like go into dreams and things. I guess the other we'll talk about the weird lady who we might be St. Trina but probably isn't.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't necessarily have a blindfold on, but she has this cap that kind of covers her eyes. And the resolution of the image isn't quite high enough, but it looks like that might have like an eye on it, but it also might just be like a gemstone or something.
So for me, it's like there's only one other mother mentioned in the story. Well, two. There's two. There's the Mother of Truth, and there's the Glowmite Queen. So my guess is that she's the Glowmite Queen because that's the only person that's been described as like being a mother, and the Godskins swaddling cloth is like basically their most important item lore wise. That's why I lean towards her. However, is her dress white? Because I've always kind of
Well, the thing
expected.
is, you can't tell because it's this like really faded picture. Like
Yeah.
everything, it's a faded picture. It looks like it's lit by candlelight, so everything
Hmm.
has this sort of orangey color to it.
Hmm.
Interesting, the narration, it starts mentioning like a seduction and a betrayal,
Yeah,
and
I
that's where
was
the gold comes from.
fascinated.
Yeah. Do we think that that guy is the one who was seduced and betrayed?
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. I was thinking of it as Marika seducing and betraying a god, like perhaps the Mother of Truth.
She seduces and betrays a lot of people, is the thing.
Yeah, yeah, she seems to just like run through the husbands.
It's specifically supposed to be that seduction and that betrayal is where, like, they say gold arose.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's true, maybe that's her in the picture and she's covered her face so no one knows it's her.
Yo.
But she looks too small to be Marika.
Yeah, America's tall as shit, to be honest.
Marika's enormous. I mean, granted, the other, you don't get a sense of scale in it. So, like, the other guy could also be tall as shit.
Yeah, or he
Um,
was when he was not old and decrepit.
yeah, the reason I'm wondering Marika is like when you see that guy, he's impaled on what look like shards of the Elden Ring.
Yep. Yeah.
When the thing first landed and we learned that the villain was called Messmer the Impaler, there's a big, like, oh, Messmer the Impaler, I bet he impaled that guy. But
Yeah.
we see Messmer doing his impaling in this trailer, and no, he's just stabbing people on spears.
Right.
He's not doing fancy shit. He's putting them on spears and burning them.
Mm-hmm.
So when I look at that guy with this weird design shoved in him, I think like Marika placing the Elden Ring in someone, making them a vessel of the ring, because it's like shards of sort of splintering golden light.
Right. Okay.
And we know that Marika has this history of like breaking fragments of the ring off and giving them to people.
Yeah.
So it almost looks like was this guy like forcibly was he forcibly given a shard of the Elden Ring and it was just like shoved into his body?
Hmm. Is he forcibly being used to create a mending rune, so to speak? Like
He doesn't look like he's
edit
enjoying
the.
himself.
No. Yeah. If he's immortal and that's like why he's old and decrepit like that, I could see that like being the final key in like the hypothetical 3-step process of getting rid of Destined Death.
Like I think that might honestly be part of it because like he is if that thing happened a really long time ago, that was the birth of the Golden Order.
Mm-hmm.
Presumably he has to be immortal.
Oh, right, right. Because the cutscene seems more like present day when they show that shot.
It's like Rykard where you see portraits of him as a person and then when you encounter him he's the snake.
Mm-hmm.
That guy when you see him in the trailer, he looks like he's in a dungeon. Like he looks like he's been locked away somewhere. It's just this like dingy cell. There's what look like bones and rocks and stuff all over the floor.
Oh, I didn't even notice the surroundings. I was always staring right at him.
So he's presumably like it's like she's done this to him and like locked him up somewhere. So I'm wondering if like is that the betrayal?
Mm.
I guess the thing to like focus on here is like this is supposed to be the birth of gold.
Mm-hmm.
So at the very start of this, like when this whole affair unfolds, Marika's presumably not got the Golden Order and she's not got the Erdtree. It's not clear what like how strong Marika was at that point. She presumably had the Elden Ring, but that was it.
She was Newman probably at that point.
Has she offered him a shard of the Elden Ring and it's just impaled him? The other oddity here,
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about timelines, is Messmer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Because Messmer is explicitly Marika's kid.
Oh, somebody said that for reals? I didn't.
Yeah,
I missed
Miyazaki
that.
said it.
Okay.
Miyazaki explicitly said Messmer is one of Marika's children, right?
Okay.
So she has a full grown kid at the start of this, and the kid has red hair.
Mm. Mm. She had red hair in her DNA to start with, perhaps.
Well, who is the father?
Oh, also that. Also that could be the reason. Right.
Yeah, because it's
Jeez.
like, that's not Godfrey's kid.
Right. It could be this other guy. Absolutely.
Well, no, but you see Messmer attacking his castle. So presumably
Oh.
Messmer is an
Mm.
adult while this is happening. So I'm like, prior to her relationship with Godfrey, like, did Marika have like I was she either openly married or having an affair with another giant?
It's like she was doing the voyageur thing back in back in the days when French people were voyageurs. They would have like a second wife over in America or in Canada.
The other possibility, right,
Yeah.
is that they talk about the red hair of the fire giants being a curse.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he wasn't born with red hair.
Oh yeah.
Marika really needs the flame sealed away. Did she try sealing it away, like in Messmer or something? Is Messmer,
Like Malekith
and
did.
that's made his hair go red? Yeah.
Okay.
So the thing about Messmer's flame is like, is there something else behind the flame? Because you get that shot very briefly of this lava filled passageway.
Yeah.
It's got this pipe in it. But
Mm-hmm.
if you look at the pipe, it has a screw in it, and the screw
Mm-hmm.
is churning, which means the screw is actually presumably sucking the lava up. And one of the lines that they add in 1.01 is that this sorcery is held to represent the fury of the volcano. The arrogance of attempting to harness it is solely that of men and serpents.
Mm.
So are they kind of going back and like tying into like Messmer's arrogance and everything is something to do with the attempts to harness the fury of Gelmir? There's an ancient serpent worshipping cult in a
Yeah.
volcano,
Yeah.
and then the DLC introduces a guy with snakes growing out of him who
Yep.
does fire stuff. Like those, and like I was saying, like a lot of the serpent stuff, it's not necessarily added in 1.01, but it's emphasized.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's like the plot as far as we can gather. But like, are there any little sort of details you wanted to talk about?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, there's mainly just one, I think.
Okay.
Maybe I'll think of a second or third. But the one I wanted to mention is that I think it's easy to forget because there's like so many little cutscenes right at the start of the game. But we have a scene that directly mirrors this first scene. When we are first reborn as the Tarnished, and we stand up as like a being for the first time, kind of deal, we're actually standing inside the Erdtree, and the Erdtree has like this gateway opening, kind of like it was like vaguely vaginal, but the stuff in the DLC is like way more explicit than this one. But it's really cool how they shot it to be like a more dramatic version of that scene. Because I think it's going to have it basically is like her birthing of her own identity. So I think it's really cool just to be designing that weird fleshy gateway to be the exact same shape as the gateway to the regular Erdtree. So like it could even be what grew into the Erdtree.
It's also the negative space of the Erdtree, because the Erdtree is the single growing golden thing. And the
Mm-hmm.
way that it's set up, it actually frames like the gold.
Mm-hmm.
It's very explicit that like she has made the Erdtree from all the corpses of the people who have been killed in this horrible purge.
Yep.
She hasn't literally fashioned them into a tree, but their deaths and the heaping of the corpses and everything is what is being used to fashion the tree.
Mm.
So the character that we haven't talked about, who is on the throne, that looks vaguely like if you squinted you might think it was Raya Lucaria.
My like hot take on that one is I have no idea who she is. I couldn't tell you like a name, but I think she's there's been this like House of Sun and House of Moon for a very, very long time in the history of Elden Ring. And so I think she's like a pro proto Rhea Lucaria, basically.
So the closest I can come to like placing her is there's a couple of really brief shots in the trailer where the character is approaching this like gloomy looking other like castle area.
Mm-hmm.
You see it in the scene where they're using throwing knives against this like sort of shadow person, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering if she's something to do with that,
Mm.
because I can't think of where else she would go.
Yeah, we haven't seen that many we haven't seen even two civilizations. Like we've seen incumbents to that civilization, but it's really just the one, it's really just that one castle. And then it's like unclear whether there's like a secondary castle that has totally different people in it.
Hmm.
Can't tell yet.
They're in this church, and you see there's these braziers that are holding, like you would assume it was glintstone if this was Raya Lucaria,
Mm-hmm.
but because of where we are and because of the Trina stuff, like it's not a color of glintstone we've seen, and it has the same hue, the same purple hue as the
Yeah.
Trina lilies. So it's like I'm assuming this is one of those places you go into and you get like a little like golden ring, which means you can't attack people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering if like those are there to create this sort of like soporific aura around her. So people are like less aggressive, and maybe that's what's keeping her safe. The implication I get from that place, right, is like it's clearly a church. Like it has pews and everything in it. Instead of a lectern and an altar, it has a throne. So it looks like it's somewhere people would go to listen to whoever was in the throne speaking to them. But the thing is, like, it's clearly abandoned, where it's just this, like, sort of, it's discarded, everything's empty, but it's not, like, it's not being destroyed, it just looks like no one's been there for a really long time.
Yeah.
And she's surrounded by these purple things, and I'm wondering if, like, there's just monsters outside and she's just staying in there.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So you're talking about like mid, everybody's getting nuked, and
I'm
like,
imagining it almost
yeah,
like Erden Chapel and Bloodborne. The other thing about her that's like kind of interesting is that frill she has.
Hmm.
Because I'm wondering if that's meant to evoke like a cobra hood, and she's also a snake person.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah. I've always wanted the like Liurnian stuff to make an official merge with the snake stuff.
You don't get a super good look at her, but like it, from what I can see, there's almost like a scale pattern on some of the details on her hood.
Okay, let me see the close up now. Oh, wow. Okay, I see what you're saying.
If you look at
Hmm.
the side of her head, it has this like cross hatched sort of pattern that almost looks like scales.
And the frills, to your point,
Mm,
also have like these cobra
yeah,
coated circular designs
yeah.
on them.
It has the same sort of, we were talking about like that weird vaginal motif of like there's like this gap, and then there's stuff
Hmm.
growing around it, which fits with everything else there.
Hmm.
So I don't. I'm like, hang on. I'll show you the place I think she's from. I'll just grab it. Yeah, this is the place I think she's in because it has that sort of purple misty effect.
Ah, you are so right.
So I think she's
Yeah, hundred
probably there. There's
percent.
probably a bunch of weird shadow monsters lurking around with machetes,
Hmm.
and she's probably going to be like, "Oh, you're safe here.
It's the
Take."
Bloodborne zone.
Yeah, finally. Another interesting thing is with regard to like trees and stuff is when you see the long shot of the castle with the lion in it.
Hmm.
It looks kind of like the when you see Stormvale, and there's all those briars growing out of it and sort of spilling over the sides. If you look at the distant shot of that, you can see that's happening to that castle from the very top. I wonder if that is going to be Deathroot.
Yeah, see, I was wondering if this whole friggin' tree is made out of Deathroot, and it's the roots of the Erdtree.
Yeah, see that would make a lot of sense. Yeah. I mean, the most confusing thing about that castle to me is that like there's a lot of gold involved.
Yeah.
There's a shot of the character fighting these people armed with candlesticks,
Yep.
which again, like that asterisk, that could be something to do with the Helfen because they talk about like there's like a candle tree that guides the dead. But they have the omen horn designs all over their faces, but they're also wearing gold.
Yeah, and I think the omens for them are masks, right?
But it looks like there actually are omens though, because there's like a dead omen on the stairs, and there's like omens that seem to be operating
Right.
the lion puppet.
Okay.
So there's a bunch of other weird little things in it. Like you see, this looks like it's the castle with the lion people again. Oh, actually, it almost certainly is. Sorry. There's like
Mm.
a scene in like a courtyard, and there's this. It looks like it used to be a fountain, maybe with two lion statues in front of it, and then growing out of it is like again, it's the same look. It's this like weird tree that's sort of growing in two directions and looping back around on itself to make like a
Mm.
hole in the middle,
Mm.
and that might be the genesis of the weird thorns or whatever they are, Deathroot growing around this golden castle.
Okay, I need to see that one because I forgot that that existed.
It's really briefly in it. It
It's like,
happens in it. It's a shot of the character doing this attack that looks very like Miquella coded.
oh, no wonder. Okay.
Like the longer this goes on, the more I think to myself, like, is that castle like was this like the place the Crucible was held? Yeah. So there's I guess a few other little unrelated things that we should probably talk about.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that we straight up see at least in the trailer. I don't know how much of that trailer is going to show up in the game
Mm-hmm.
because, as we know, Bamco uploaded a bunch of like Elden Ring cinematics that aren't actually in the game at all. Presumably, they were at some point, and
Mm.
they've just cut them or was put them on the thing. So the fact that we straight up see Saint Trina on screen, I am like wondering if like we are actually going to directly interact with Saint Trina at some point. One of the lines in the trailer is like they're not saints, they just happen to be on the losing side of a war.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like they
Oh.
keep flagging up Miquella is very kind. Miquella is here to like make everyone feel better. Miquella's here to remove our sin. So is this like a place that lost the war with Marika and Miquella has come to kind of redeem it?
Right. He's trying to bring back the glory days.
Or at least he's trying to help them or something. Miquella is almost too perfect as described in the base game.
Yeah, I'm not a super fan of. He's gonna Griffith it all, but continue.
Yeah. So Miquella is described almost like he is too good.
Right,
He is like,
absolutely.
and there's even this unused Miquella ending that just looks like, okay, everything's better now.
Yeah, I'm glad that's not in the game. Actually, I think that would have been kind of lame.
So I'm sort of waiting for like the penny to drop and like something about Miquella to be revealed that is like a
Right.
negative quality.
Yo.
And I sort of wonder if it's like Miquella's flaw is like naivety.
Yeah, that's more what I lean towards.
Because I think it's notable that Saint Trina is depicted as being older than Miquella.
Yes.
So it's like, is Saint Trina Miquella with the wisdom of experience?
Okay. Yeah.
Is Shadow of the Erdtree going to be the story of like Miquella kind of growing up
Mm-hmm.
and realizing that like actually you can't fix everything?
Mm-hmm.
And then changing from Miquella, who is like attempts to fix everything and maybe making it worse like his mother,
Yeah.
into becoming Saint Trina, who is more mature and is still kind hearted, but is approaching it from the perspective of just lessening people's suffering rather than actively trying to like redeem everyone.
Mm-hmm. Interesting take.
It would actually be really neat if like you're encountering Miquella phantoms throughout the game. And then at the end, like there is no Miquella, it's actually Saint Trina the whole time.
Oh, I hope so.
It's like done a complete rotation and it's gone from like Miquella becomes Saint Trina in his dreams to like Saint Trina is now the one who is in charge and she is sending out visions of Miquella.
Self-actualization is just an infinite well of metaphor, and that's why lots of literature ends up being a metaphor for that. And I've always thought that Elden Ring, in some ways, is trying to do that, and your interpretation, I think, would line up perfectly with those themes of like trauma, copying your parents subconsciously, and then slowly the subconscious becomes conscious, and that is what Saint Trina is all about. Saint Trina is about like a liminal state. You know, it's like sleeping isn't quite death, but it's not the wakeful frenzy that's like the counterpart to it. There is one snag that I want to mention before I pass it back to you,
Yeah.
and that is that they said Miquella sacrificed everything, even his fate. And right as they were saying even his fate, they show the like
Saint Trina.
sleepy fate girl. You know how Ronnie
Yeah.
goes to sleep when she's going to meet
Yeah.
her fate. So if he's dropping Saint Trina, I'm like, no, don't do it.
No, but what if Miquella's fate was to become the new Elden Lord? But what if he's given up that fate to become Saint Trina?
I hope that's what I hope it is.
Okay, so we're now like an hour and 45 minutes into this 20-minute conversation. So, I think we got to wrap it up.
Yep.
Okay,
I think so too.
Thank you very much once again.
Yeah, thank you, Sophie. This was a really fun one.
And yeah, do you just want to plug your Instagram and your game stuff?
Yeah, my game is going to have an alpha this year. It's called Hysteria.
Nice.
It's a 3D witchy RPG, and my girlfriend just got done with like a big, well, not done, but done with like the layout of our first big like ruins area.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it's getting really real. It's getting really
Nice.
professional.
Nice.
And I'm like very excited. I might be tapping some people on the shoulder for like play testing in like a month or two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I guess we'll record about eyeballs tomorrow.
Okay, I'm down.
Okay, cool. Okay. Bye everyone.
Bye.